So, welcome. So, today I am here with Emmajane Love, which is incredibly exciting. There was this real deep calling to reach out to you. Like, it felt like a real deep intuition of like this message that I received to reach out and see if you were interested in being on the podcast. So, I believe that I actually first came across you or first connected with you about 5 or 6 years ago. And then you've been like in the ethers for me, like kind of these waves of coming into my world. Um, and there was an incredible masterclass or like a multi-day experience that you had at some point. And this actually gave me an incredible shift in my relationship with my partner. There was something, it was where you were going through the different roles that we play as the rescuer, the caretaker, and it just really blew my mind. And it was I've actually shared this story a lot in my with my community around when I was holding a lot of resentment toward my partner, and I had set this intention to release the resentment. And initially, I was like, I'm releasing resentment toward my partner, but what I realized was deeper down, I was actually holding a lot of resentment toward myself. And what I found was I was stuck in a lot of rigidity, a lot of seriousness, and a lot of blame and a lot of resentment. And your masterclass or your experience that you had online helped me to shift so much of this. It gave me the awareness, the peace that I needed. And I just saw this like shining light of like, holy shit, like I can see that there's so much deeper layers here. And so that supported me to just dissolve so much armoring, and in that became a lot more softness and a lot more ability to connect with my partner in a deeply intimate way. Um, we're going to be exploring today we're going to see where it takes us because there's so much here, but definitely exploring the spaces of play and sexuality and deep intimacy. And when we were chatting prior to this episode, you shared with me as well that you're also a recovering good girl. And how amazing! Like I love the name of the podcast. It's really fascinating. I've shared this before, but the name and the logo for this podcast actually came in an intimate experience with my partner, like at the moment of orgasmic release. I saw the image and the name, and it was just, yeah, really amazing to connect with you and to hear that you're also a recovering good girl. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story, and maybe what's brought you here. I received an email recently where you were sharing how you were moving towards teaching more about play. So I'd love to just hand over to you and hear about your experience and your story.
Amazing. Thanks, Monique. I love that you were on, one of those experiences, and it's so nice to hear that feedback about what you received because often I don't hear those things unless someone shares it with me. And so it's so cool that it was so impactful for you. So I appreciate your sharing and the roles work, learning about these different roles, the people pleaser, the good girl, the rescuer, the high achiever. That's a big part of my work and it just still carries with me all the time of like this is such important pieces and work for us to know as human beings. It's like the roles that we play in life. So that's really cool to hear how impactful that was for you and your relationship. So where do I begin? That's kind of the question of like there's so many places where I've gone through different awakenings and transformations. So I'll just start with because your podcast name is related to the good girl. I will start there and I'm brought up in New Zealand and attended Catholic school and was very much conditioned to be a good girl, to be pleasing, to behave in a certain way, and to be rewarded for good behavior, essentially, and particularly being a student, studying, and getting straight A's. Like I was very much rewarded for doing well at school. And what's really interesting, and this ties into the play stuff, is that I always regarded myself as a very quiet child, as very, at school particularly, very quiet, like keep to myself, someone that would know the answers to things because I was very academic, but would be too scared to put up my hand because I was afraid to get it wrong. And what's really interesting is my mum gave me some school reports maybe about a year ago. She gave me these school reports that she kept. And for the first one or 2 years, I read the reports, and the report said, Emmajane loves to get up in front of the class and perform for everyone. And I read this and I was like, what? This is not me. Like, I didn't, and I have no memory, absolutely no memory of doing this. And I was like, that is not how what I was like at school. And then after maybe like 7 or 8 years old, the school reports started to change to Emmajane is such a delightful student. She's so hardworking and diligent. There was nothing about expression or performance. And that to me says like something happened. Something happened in my childhood where I was shut down. I don't know what that thing was, but what I know is there's something that has happened there. And I've been very blessed in the last 5 years. Actually, 5 years ago, I ended up in burnout because I was working so hard. I was traveling. I was running workshops and retreats around Australia and in Bali, and it looked like I had this amazing life. Uh, and I just ended up in burnout, and my nervous system had collapsed, and I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't. Yeah, I basically couldn't function, and that's what started to lead me to play. So that started to open myself up to, well, what can I do? What can I do? And someone actually said to me, what have you been wanting to do for a really long time, but you never had time to do it? And I was like, improv. I really love to do improv. And so I started taking improv classes, and I loved it. I brought up a lot. It was very challenging, but I was like, this is stuff I love to do at school. Drama classes and musicals and things like that. Um, and I was like, it was started to bring back this really silly, playful part of myself that I had shut down for a really long time. And so that's what really started my journey into play.
Hmm. I feel like you're telling my story. This is like really
Yeah.
wild. And like I said, my partner Liam would just constantly tell me like, she's, you're like, your stories are so similar. Like, it's absolutely wild because it's very similar for me as well. I have very little memory of childhood. And I was also like very shy to the point of almost like necessarily being mute. I wouldn't speak. I would also didn't want to put my hand up, but was also very academic and very intelligent. And I don't know how, but it's like I didn't want to make any mistakes. And so I wouldn't do
Mm.
any workings out when I was doing the work. And they were like, oh, you have to show us how you got the answer. And I wouldn't show them. I would just put the answer. And they're like, how'd you get the answer? And I just would look straight forward and I wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. And like wouldn't do any of the work. It got to the test and it was just 100%. So I didn't even want to show that I make any mistakes in the working out or any of it. It just had to be perfect. So that's really, really fascinating. But also had this deep desire for expression. Like I loved drama as well and musicals and putting myself out there in that way. But there was, again, something that happened that shut a lot of that down. And those layers built up over the years as well. And it's quite fascinating because it's probably been the last, I'd say, 5 years ago when I started to touch kind of sexuality and embodiment work and expression in that way. But what I noticed is I was still taking a lot of it very seriously. And I wasn't like play was very inaccessible. It wasn't even really a thought for me. I'm like, I've got somewhere to go. I've got shit to do and I'm like I'm doing the work and it was all very serious for me. It was actually when my first child, so I've got two children, and when I gave birth to my first child, and they're just full of play. It's just like so natural for them, that playfulness. And that's actually what started to spark it for me and started to really show me just how rigid and serious I had become. And so I've also been starting to explore play as medicine and how to bring more play and how to make this journey so fun and enjoyable. Um, because it can be taken so seriously. Like the healing journey, that spiritual path, it's like discipline rather than let me play, let me explore, let me see what's here, what's this revealing to me, with almost like what I'm seeing is like innocent, bright eyes. Like, what is here?
Yeah, it's like this sense of curiosity and awe and wonder. And it's interesting you talk about this personal development piece because that was what was happening for me when I was in burnout. I I was actually teaching tantra and running intimacy workshops, and yet I actually had no intimacy in my life with men in particular. And I was just like working to the next event, like launching the next thing. Like it was like a constant, this high achievement, and never like allowing my spaciousness for what I wanted and what I deeply desired. And I was like, oh, one day when I finish running this event or I've launched this next thing, then I'll have more space. When I'm not traveling so much and I'm more grounded, those kind of things I would say to myself. And so burnout was such a gift because it forced me to look at all these things that I was avoiding essentially. And I actually hired my own intimacy coach, which is very edgy because I was like, I should be able to have this figured out. I'm an intimacy coach. Why would I need an intimacy coach? And I had to humble myself. And I hired this woman that I'd worked with before and in the past, and she was amazing. And one of the first things she said to me, she was like, you have done enough personal development. Like you have graduated. I want you to do a graduation ceremony. And from now on, just for now, for the next 3 months we're working together, you are only allowed to do things for fun. If it feels like fun, then you can do it. But if it's about trying to heal yourself or fix yourself as though you're broken, you're not doing it. And it was like probably the best thing that I could have. It was such a permission granter for me. And even I remember I did book in to go to retreat in Bali, and it was like a woman's embodiment, attitude, mixed gender embodiment retreat. And I was questioning, I'm like, is this for my healing? I was like, no, my intention is to actually go for connection and fun, not to heal myself. And when I went there, my whole energy was so different. And I'd been in containers like this before, and I usually was pretty closed to connecting with men. Like I felt like no men were ever interested in me. And I had these men like asking me out, wanting to take me on dates. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Because I was in more of this playful, open energy. And I'd already been practicing flirting, and I started to go out and start dating again. And I was just putting myself out there and facing my fear of rejection, which was actually what was like one of the things I was avoiding was rejection. And because the more I was keeping myself busy with work, the less I could experiencing the fear of rejection and intimacy, or the rejection that I might perceive I might receive in intimacy. So, so the safety was the achievement, right? Safety, and yet what I was most longing for was intimacy. And I feel like play, because play, to me, play helps us be more of ourselves and to bring out the parts of ourselves that are shut down, and it also is very regulating for the nervous system. And so as I was doing more things that represented play to me, I opened up to being seen so much more. I let people see me more, and I let men see me more. And so I'm so glad you spoke to the personal development piece, because like it can become such an addiction, and it can be like, I mean, how many courses do people sign up to at once? I know I mean, I think I'm in like three. I've had to limit myself. I mean, it's not like I never do personal development. I still do personal development. I still, but I have to be conscious of that. Oh, do I really need to sign up to this next course, or is this just like I'm relating to myself as though I'm broken?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I so relate to this piece as well. And I'm also like a fellow personal development addict. Like,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of the time it's come from this place of like, they've got the answer. Like they've got the magic pill. They've got the thing that's gonna fix me or heal me. It's the missing piece that I need. And there's this tendency to go, or has been this tendency to go outside of myself for the answer. And it's like knowing that, yes, it's beautiful to have those mentors and do the coaches and do the work and the development work, but getting curious about where we are coming from. Like a lot of the time, what I do notice, not only for myself, but for others that I've worked with, is we're coming from this place of I'm broken and need fixing, rather than coming in from a place of curiosity and what is here for me. And a big shift that I've noticed for myself is following the magnetic pull, the intrigue and the curiosity, like, oh, I feel like there's something here for me. Not like, oh, I'm broken and like, where's the lifeline? Like, where's that savior? Where's that rescuer because I'm drowning? And also knowing that that has been part of my journey as well. So, also honoring the parts when I did feel like I was drowning and really did need support. And also honoring the times when that, yes, there was healing to take place. So it's not saying that there isn't, but it's not coming from a place of like I'm broken. It's coming from a place like there's something hurting here and I need support to nurture that part. But definitely have noticed the personal development space becoming so serious and so heavy. Like there's always another thing, another trauma, another thing to heal, another thing to learn. And it's like, oh my God, when is it gonna be done? Like that's what I notice for a lot of people is like, oh my God, there's more. Or like, why is this coming back up? Like, oh, I didn't do it right. Rather than like, let me get curious and let me be with what's coming up.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we have to be very careful of. I actually did a reel the other day that just said to people, "You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you, and there was never ever anything wrong with you." And I had so many people reach out and say, "I needed to hear that. I really needed to hear that." And um, something that I want to mention is that what was interesting is when I was in burnout, that I didn't know I was burnout. I thought I was just, as some people in the personal development call it, the void. And it's like I'm going through an identity crisis and I'm just in the void. But I was in this place for like 4 months. So I'm like, that's a long time. And I was trying to heal myself using different processes and techniques, trying to heal. And actually, I was making it worse. And what I needed was things like really simple things like nature, like gentle movement practices, um, and not because I needed to heal myself, but just because that was like taking care of my body. Going to the gym and doing weights. This is really good for the nervous system. Being around animals, like I was living with a housemate, I had two beautiful dogs, so just like being co-regulating with these animals, eating healthy, nourishing food, and then doing that things that are like creative or improv, and then starting to connect with other humans and be vulnerable and express myself, like those were the things that actually helped me. Those were the things that were really healing for me, but I wasn't trying to heal myself. It was just like, okay, what I'm doing is not working. It's making it worse, and I actually can see like some of the things I was doing was re-traumatizing myself because I was in a lot of also in I was in freeze and collapse, and so those things were that I was trying to do, like, oh, I'm like, maybe if I do this anger release process. It's like, no, that's actually, and I'm not saying don't to people not to do, because there's time for that. There's times where that stuff is important, but at that time, it's like I'd actually done enough of that, and I'd probably done too much of that to the point where my nervous system was fried.
Mm.
So I am such a big advocate for play because it really was so regulating for my nervous system, and to play to me is, and I think everyone has a different version of play, is about connection and self-expression and embodiment and creativity and intimacy and vulnerability, um, communication. So there's lots of different things that play means, and I think it's individual for everyone. But one of the things I thought about is like, what are the things that I love to do as a child that I no longer do? And one of the other things I did, I also joined a dance troupe, which wasn't like a thing that I was like, oh, I'm going to join a dance troupe. I got invited to join a dance troupe, and I'd always loved dancing as a child, and it's like a natural gift that I had, but I just wasn't into choreography. So this dance troupe was more about embodiment and storytelling,
Mm.
and we started creating these dance rituals. It was a dance, like a ritual theater group, and we go to events and tell stories through our dance, and it was very impactful. but what I loved about it was that I got to connect with these women and we got to create a community and had a shared vision, and then we got to perform together, and it was just a powerful thing that I got to experience, and it brought out that performer part of me that I wasn't allowing to be seen or to be expressed. And it's something that, as I spoke about, like when I was younger, I was a performer at some point. Like there was a performer in me that loved to create and create. I remember with my cousins, we used to create performances and things like that for our family. And I was just like, wow, like I've been so academic and so like I need to sign up to the next program so I can learn this course so that I can teach this course. And it's like, no, actually, how does my soul want to express itself?
Yeah.
What rather than like, I need to know more because I don't know enough. Which, by the way, to anyone listening, that feeling never ends. If you already have that, you're probably going to think that you don't know enough, and it's like it's
I
one of the
love
things.
that.
A lot of my clients are like, "Oh, I need to do this another certification," and I was like, "No, you actually just need to work on like being free to fully express yourself." Because I was actually, I'll tell a quick story. I was working with a client recently who came and she's like, "I've done all these certifications and all these courses." I'm here to be a leader, and I want to take everything I've learned and I want to put it into something, and I don't know what it is because I've done so many things. And then I sat down with her, and through the session what we got to is that she actually needs to work on activating her voice. I said, this is not about what you've learned. It's like, and this art, this she's an artist. Like I'm like, you're actually, when I through the questions that I asked her, and she started crying. She's like, yeah, like this is actually what I want to do. I'm like, and she's just spent thousands, and not that she would change it, but thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on courses because I need to know more so that I can be enough, so that I can teach. But then that might not be the journey for that person. There might be something that I'm always like the curiosity of what's actually here. What's here that is within me that really deeply is desiring to be fully expressed.
Yeah, I so resonate with that because, yeah, there's this, for so many, this deep wound and idea that I'm not enough as I am. Therefore, I must do more, be more, learn more. And I've definitely gotten in that trap myself where it's like I need the next course and the next course. It's quite fascinating. Like I'm also really into human design, and I'm a 5-1, so the one being investigator, like all of the knowledge, like I need all of the pieces. And I can get caught in that trap of like perfectionism of like needing it to be perfect and needing to have all of the information. And very similar, like my journey was really about activating my voice and coming into my fullest expression. But there's always going to be more to learn. And for me, I love learning. Like, I love that investigator piece. But what I found was like, for me, like building that discernment of when I'm investigating and learning for like curiosity and play, and when I'm doing it because I think I need another thing on my in my belt, and I need another thing on my, in a sense, like resume. Um, yeah, and like really starting to more follow that intuitive, that magnetic pull of like, actually, this is for me.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because my client's actually 5-1 as well. And I'm a line one, so I'm a 1-3, and so it is like you say, it's like following the curiosity, like following what do I feel pulled to learn more about, rather than that whole, oh, I need to know this because I don't know enough. And
Yeah.
it really is so different. And for me, it's about like I know something and I experiment with it. That's why I love improv, because improv is a lot of experimenting, really. And I feel like I don't really need to. And the cool thing is, I don't really need to know a lot. Improv is like about not knowing. It's
Yeah.
about failing. It's about. That's why I love it. Is because I've had such a fear of failure and a fear of making mistakes. Improv is all about failing. It's all about making mistakes. So when I do, which I bring improv into all of my events now, even my sexuality training, like we do improv in it. It's so fun, and because I want to give people permission to make mistakes, to be silly, to not had their shit together, to be imperfect and to be celebrated in
Mm.
that. And you don't have to be a good at improv. Like, I'm not the best improver, but people know me for it, but not because I'm good at it. It's like there's a lot of people out there that are amazing at improv, because and it's improv's not really about that. It's just about like, let's just make this shit up and see what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to weave it into a lot of things that I do, and bring in a lot of embodiment as well, like what I call embodied play, like working with our bodies and movement and that kind of thing. And now I am doing more performance stuff as well. Like I've actually brought like owned more of that part of myself, which has been really cool.
Mm. Yeah, and there was a part that you shared in the play email as well, that I wanted to bring into the space, and it was around like the areas that were most shut down for you is like what you teach and share in the world now, that play and that sexuality and that expression. And it's so fascinating because this is very similar for me as well. Like those were the areas that were really shut down. Um, and I loved where you shared about like it's that journey that we go through, that's like what we teach, or that's what we're here to reclaim. um yeah, I'd love if you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, so I think I said in there, we what do we teach? What we most need to reclaim.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and yeah, so I'll just speak to my journey, and I've already touched on it. Is yeah, these two parts are the sexuality um, was shut down quite early for me, and I would consider myself quite frigid,
Mm.
or I judged myself as that for quite some time. And then I went wild, as many of us do, after going through a big breakup, and I was just like, looking for a lot of validation through sex, essentially. And I thought I was empowered, but not really. And then, so yeah, so the sexuality stuff is interesting because, and I think a lot of people that work in sexuality have very similar stories where when we're younger, this was shut down for us. And so there's a saying that says our voids often become our values, where what was missing or what was shut down suddenly becomes like a higher value, that we start seeking those things and those experiences. And so I really feel like that has what's happened for me as I started to just feel drawn to these things, because I was looking for the spaces to talk about it, to explore it, to express it. And yeah, same with the play and the creativity stuff. Like it was being conditioned to be so academic, and that success meant going to uni and getting a degree. And then realizing that actually there's so much in me that wants to be like, I'm an artist, I'm a creative. Like I was studying to be an accountant of all things, and I'm like, what the hell? No offense to any accountants out there, but like that would have I would have, if I continued on that path, I would have been probably very unhappy. And I actually worked in an accounting firm as a manager, and I was like, oh, the thought of just like sitting in an office all day, like crunching numbers, is like prison to me.
Mm.
So, I'm designed to be creative, and I think that, if for the people that are listening, like I think it's important to like get curious about what was shut down for me as a child. And I was taught, like, usually we have some toxic shame around it, like there's something that happened and we get told that that is not okay, it's not safe to be expressed, it's not okay to be expressed, if you do this you are bad or you are not valuable. Like creativity, like, sorry, academia was valued far more over creativity for me
Yeah.
as a child. Yeah, so it's like, okay, do the thing that's going to get most love and approval. More love and approval is going to be doing well at school, studying hard, doing my homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, work. And the sexuality stuff was shut down as a child because I was exploring my pleasure, and my parents walked in when I think I was about 8 years old, and I got told that that was wrong and that was bad. I shouldn't be doing that, and then I just kept doing it in secret, and it became hidden, so there was shame around it. And I also was very shy in talking to boys, and I didn't have a lot of education around. There's a little lack of sex education, so I kind of figured it out. Had to figure it out on my own, and attracted a man that, or I was 16, he was 21, and when I was 20, and he was like the bad boy, and I learned a lot through like my exploring my sexuality through that relationship, and it was more like rebellious and this kind of thing. But it was like there's always a curiosity there of those things that were shut down. It's almost like a taboo-ness of like, oh, I want to explore these things that I was told I wasn't allowed to explore, these things that weren't valuable. And I feel like there's some sadness that I really didn't find play until I was, what, 30, 35, 35. I'm 40 now, almost 41. And like, I can't believe I was shut down for that long.
Yeah. I realized, like, for me, when it started to spark when my son came into the world, and I realized in a moment of like just being in such like belly laughter, I was like, I don't remember the last time I've laughed like this, and that was like such a sadness in that. Um, yeah, and I'm curious as well. Like, there's so many threads here that's coming through for me. Um, one piece is the part of you that did feel like, because I feel like there's so many of us that have that conditioning around academia is more valuable and intelligence and like doing the things that in the order, in the way that you're meant to. And what I find a lot of people that are listening are looking to break free, are looking to come home to their authenticity, their expression, their way of play. And I love the piece that you did share around play looks different for everyone. Like I feel like we all have the creative within us as well. And that can be something that's shut down for a lot of us. It's like, how do I start to open up to more of that creativity, more of that play, more of that expression? It's quite interesting because I know as well that you're a projector, and I've actually got a client who's a projector and in accounting, and also wants to get out of it and is really exploring more of her, like her human design, to discover like what am I here to share in the world. And so it kind of sparked for me, like I'm curious where that shift happened for you, of what allowed you to move in such a different direction away from, even though there was still that need, or that feeling like I need to know more, but there was still that shift of moving more into creativity, and your authentic expression of sexuality and play in the world.
Mm. Yeah, so what actually happened is that I was running a tantra retreat in Bali, and one of our assistants, he said, I'd love to offer some improv classes in the morning, just like two or three for the people attending. And I was like, great. I'd done improv when I was at school, so I was like, okay, cool, that'd be great. And I was like, I want to come. So I came, and I remember thinking to myself, I don't even want to I just want to do this for the rest of the retreat. I was like, I'm having so much fun, and I'm expressing myself in ways that I have not expressed before. And I just want to do this for the rest of the retreat. And we also do and this, I actually do this at all my sexuality events. We do a, oh, not all of them, some of them, but the most of my events, we do it like a dress up night, and we get into characters. And this particular one was like a swap gender, so we had to dress up as a, masculine or like feminine stuff. So I dressed up as this. I created this nice guy character, which is like my inner masculine like character. I had this. I put a strap on, and I had these glasses, and we had like a minute or two to get in a circle and just fully express this character, this part of ourselves that was like shut down and just wanted to be wanted to be expressed. And everyone got to do that. Everyone had an opportunity. And I remember looking back when someone asked me, what was your favorite part of the retreat? I'm like, that was my favorite part. That just brought me so much joy, like witnessing everyone's expressions, everyone getting really creative, everyone just going there. It was incredible. And then there was also another moment where we had this circle where in the mornings there is an opportunity for people just to express like what's alive for you, what's here. And I remember I just stood up one day and I jumped around and ran around the circle like skipping like this playful child. And I'm the facilitator, like right, and it's like I just want to be a child and I want to be free and I want to play and I want to be silly and I don't want to get this right and I just want to like be free, and I was skipping and I was jumping over people, and people, I felt so free. I just and people were really like inspired by that. And then there was another moment. This retreat was actually really powerful, where I started. This is when I was starting to go into burnout, where I was teaching something, and I must have had a brain fog or something, but I was really stuffing up what I was saying, and I was like getting really confused, and that people were getting confused, or my perception was that they were getting confused. And I remember I just stepped into the circle and I looked around and I just said, I feel like I'm completely fucking this up. Like, I'm making so many mistakes. And I don't want to have all my shit together. I don't want to be a leader that has to have all their shit together. I just want to be human and I just want to own that. I feel like I'm fucking this up right now. And I looked into every one of their eyes, and they, like, almost all of them had tears in their eyes, and they were just like, this is a real leader. This is a real leader, is someone who's willing to sit in the circle and say, I'm not getting this perfect. I'm human. I'm fucking this up. And for me, that was intimacy. That was like, and the amount of respect that I had because of that, they're like, this is the kind of leadership we want. We want leaders that are real. We want leaders that are vulnerable. We want leaders that are going to really share what's really alive for them. And so what happened is that things just started to dismantle the parts of me that were trying to hold all my shit together. That was trying to be this perfect leader that knew everything, that didn't make mistakes, that held this kind of authority that people looked up to as knowing everything. And I was like, this is like actually crumbling a lot of my identity. And in that, I'm also starting to feel really free.
Mm.
And yeah,
I'm just like full body
yeah,
tingles, and I can feel
yeah,
the tears in my eyes.
I can see it. I can
Mm.
see the tears in your eyes. Yeah. So that was so, and I'm so, thank you for asking this question because I've forgotten about these moments that were so profound. And I didn't know at the time, but it was just like an intuitive, like, I've just got to sit in this and I've got to let myself be seen in it. I just have to let myself be seen as this woman who doesn't have her shit together, as this leader that doesn't have her shit together. And the reality is, people don't really want leaders that have their shit together. They want leaders that are real, that are human, and that are going to inspire them to be more of themselves by seeing leaders be more of themselves, essentially. And then what was really cool, I'll just tell you this last part of the story. This is when I realized that I was missing out in my life on a lot of things by being this, high achiever, people pleaser, um, and not following what really lights me up. Is I had this. It was my last day in Bali after the retreat, and I had this option to go to like a healing event. I was like, go to this healing event, or there was this pool, this magnetic pool, as you said before, to go to Seminyak, where there's like lots of nightclubs and things, and go out dancing on my own.
Yeah.
And and I also was like, I want to meet a man. I am like, I've been in and out of Bali for years and I never had sex in Bali. I was like, I need to pop my Bali cherry. I need to stop being a good girl that comes here just to work on myself and heal myself. Fuck it. I was like, this is like this fuck it moment. I'm going out to this, fuck this healing shit. going, going out dancing. And I was like, I was this, I don't know, when I was dancing, it was like I was on fire. And I had this group of like people come up to me and they're like, "Can we get photos with you?" And I don't know what was going on, but it was just like I was like a magnet. This is magnetism. And right at the end of the night, this I'm sitting there having a drink, and this guy over table was like, hey. And I looked at him and I'm like, oh, he's pretty cute. And then I suddenly was like flirting with him. And I was like, who is this person who knows how to flirt? I was like, oh my God, I'm flirting really amazing. And he's like, do you want to come out to another club with us? And I was like, the good girl in me was like, flying out tomorrow. I better be responsible. Like, I better go to bed and get an early night. And then this other part of me was like, fuck it. And I said, I don't really want to go out to another club, but I'll go to a bar around the corner, which is near my hotel. And so we went around there and we chatted more. And then I came home to my hotel room, which was like wild for me. I was like, who is this person that takes a man home to hotel room? It's like I'm 20 years old again. And we had this amazing night together. And then he left. And I just thought nothing of it. I'm like, that was a great time. That was fun. And then the next day, he messages me and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm at the airport. He's like, I'm on my way to the airport. And I'm sitting in customs and in this booth, and he walks in. It's like something out of a movie. He sits down next to me and he grabs me and he just starts making out with me. Like, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? And we're there for like half an hour, like little, like teenagers, like just connecting and kissing. And he's like, where's your gate? I'm going to walk you to your gate. He takes my hand, walks me to the gate. And I shit you not, his plane is next to my plane. They are leaving like half an hour apart. And I was like, this is wild. This is like, I could not have planned this.
Mm.
And it's because, and then he kissed me goodbye at the gate. I was like 24 hours ago. I did not even know this guy. And now I'm like having a guy kiss me at the gate to say goodbye to me. Like, what is going on? He's from Dubai. Like, we live, yeah, miles away. And I just felt this joy and this aliveness because I had been spontaneous. I said yes to joy. I said yes to play. I said yes to going with the flow. And it was like the universe was like, you've been asking for more connection, intimacy. Like, here you go. Like, you've done so much healing in yourself. Like, just go and play and enjoy your life. And magic is going to show up without you trying to work on this thing. So one day you can have this experience. It's like the experience is actually available to you now if you just say yes and follow that magnetic pull. And so that's what showed me in that moment. I was like, oh, I've been relating to myself as though I need to keep healing myself instead of following what really lights me up, instead of just saying yes to what's going to be a really joyful, fun experience, instead of just being spontaneous.
Mm.
And so there was that was just like a massive shift for me and showing me what was possible. So I know that was a bit of a long story, but it's just, yeah, it had to be shared.
I loved it. Yeah, I just felt like such a somatic like liberation, like hearing your story
Mm,
around that, because I've had this a similar experience of like now I'm a leader and I'm this and I'm that, and again putting those labels and playing those roles and then feeling like entrapped in that of like now I've got to act a certain way and I've got to be a certain way and feeling like you got to have it all together. And this has been actually a bit of a theme coming up in our community as well, as like having to hold everything together. And this is something that I've worked through a lot as well of like I can't possibly just let everything fall apart. Like what will happen if I'm not in control? And that fear of like what will happen? And yeah, like actually having to meet that intense vulnerability of like, I actually have to let this fall apart. I have to let this crumble. And the fear, but the liberation in that of just like, oh, just, oh, I'm free. And I noticed so many others as well, just like holding on for dear life that we can't actually live it. We're just trying to hold everything together and then you kind of trying to balance all the stuff and you're like, it just is so heavy. And what I loved about that share is following what lights you up, following your joy. And that's a big piece that I got from human design as well, like being a manifesting generator. Like, I'm here to be in my joy. Like, that's literally like a big part of my blueprint. And so that became my mantra, is like, how can I follow my joy in this? Because even when it did come to business, it's like, well, I have to do all these things. And like, and I know for a lot of women, even without the business, it's like this never ending to do list, all the things that we have to do, the shoulds and the things that we've got to manage all of the time. Rather than it's like, yeah, there might be some things that we, in a sense, have like responsibilities that we have. But for me, was like, how can I bring more joy into this? How can I follow more of that magnetic pull rather than trying to push and force and do all of the time? That does lead to the inevitable burnout. How can I be more in my joy and follow that? And then when I do, similar to you, it's like magic happens. And it's just like, I don't even understand. Like, we can't logically, like, understand it. It doesn't make sense. But on a deeper level, it does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, and I feel like that's when we're following our soul. Like we like when I look at those experiences where I've just followed that pull or followed the soul, like magic has happened, and I feel like there is often something, and what I see is there are so many people that have this inner knowing that there is something in their soul that wants to be expressed, but they just keep going down a different path. They keep in these from this conditioning of, whether it's the high achiever or the good girl or the rescuer. It's like they keep going down that, and it's not fulfilling. It takes us away from what would deeply bring us joy.
Yeah.
And I've had many conversations, particularly recently, with there was one experience with a woman who I was sitting next to at an event, and she was talking about what she's doing. She was like, oh, I'm working on this project and it's really important. And she's like, but what I really love is I love beautifying things. And I was like, why aren't you doing that? And she's like, oh, because I think it's frivolous. Like people won't pay for that, or people don't want that. How do I market it? I don't know. And I said, I just reflected. I said, I really felt you when you shared that. I really felt you. And it was almost like, wow, I could actually do this. Like this could be the work that I do in the world.
Mm.
And a couple of other women came over, and I said, I'd love you to share with them your idea. And they were like, I would pay for that. That sounds amazing.
It's
And they're like,
magnetic.
yeah, and it's the magnetic thing. And when I share, I mean, I get paid to play basically. Like that's what I get to do. I create my events, and I'm in the process of actually creating a game at the moment. And I'm stepping into teaching play in more corporate spaces as well. Um, and I was like, man, if people pay me to play, people pay you for anything. Like,
I love
like
that.
I can't
I,
believe. Sometimes I'm like, I was saying to someone this morning actually, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe that I get to do this. Like it's like God chose me to do this. Like, oh my God. And she said to me, the person I was sharing with, she said, I think that's how it should feel for everyone. We should all get to feel like that. I can't believe that I get to do this. And if that's not how you feel, then you're probably not doing what you're here to be doing.
yeah, I love that. I love that so much. There was actually something in one of your podcast episodes where you were sharing how you were literally being paid to be in your own pleasure. And I was like, how wild is that? And it's so funny that you bring that up, because I had a similar thing of when I first started on my spiritual path and personal development, it just lit me up. I was like, a whole new world opened up for me. And that's when I first became like personal development addict. And I loved like any book I could get my hands on, and spirituality and the secret, and all of that stuff. It was just lighting me up. And I was like, what if I could get paid to talk about all this stuff? And I would just talk to anyone that would listen. Like, I was in my party days, so I was kind of pendulating between spiritual development and personal development, and then like getting wasted and partying and going hard and that. And it was just massive pendulation. But when I was partying, and it'd be like 3 in the morning and we're all on drugs, and I'm just like talking about all this spiritual stuff that I'm learning, and like guys that are sometimes even like twice my age are like, how are you so wise? And I'm like, I know, like I'm just so wise. And I was just like so excited just to talk about what I was so passionate about. But I didn't know how to express myself at that point. Like putting my like doing a pre-recorded video was terrifying. Like talking to anyone when I wasn't drunk was terrifying. I was like, how am I ever going to bridge that gap? Like if I'm drunk, I'm great. I can just talk about all the things. But actually being in my voice and my authenticity and vulnerability and being seen, terrifying. And so I was on that journey to developing that and finding my voice. And then when I did, I was like starting to talk about this stuff and starting to share what I was learning, and it was nowhere near perfect. And I don't believe that there's really any getting to perfect. I always believe that there's more room for growth, and my voice has developed over time. And yeah, I still get nervous. Yeah, I still like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? And that can still come up for me, but it's no longer all consuming where I'm like, this is what I'm here to do, this is what I desire to share. And coming to that realization not too long ago, because the business that I run today, it really only began, I'm going to say probably about 4 years ago. So it's still fresh to me. But when I started to go into like teaching and sharing and talking about what I was learning, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm literally getting paid to do what I love and to talk about what I love talking about and to help other people on that journey that I've been through. Like, what a freaking gift. Like, it's just mind blowing that we get to do this. And then also show others that it's possible for them too. You can do what lights you up.
Yes. Ah, yes, so good. I love like it's yeah, I mean I feel sometimes I I just want to give people permission to follow the thing, and when I'm talking to people and they're sharing with me about what they're doing, what they're interested in, and being a projector, I can pick up like, oh, I can feel the difference in one thing they're sharing with me, and I'm like, that's not really the thing. And then they start sharing about something else, and I'm like, oh, now I feel you. And it's like I just want to give you the permission to do that. I feel like that's a lot of the work that I do is just giving people permission to do what they really really want to do. And like people like you and myself, is like the more that we do that, the more that it will give people that permission.
Yeah.
And it's also like something you spoke about is like how excited you were to share what you were sharing, right? And I think that's a really important point, because sometimes what I see is that people are trying to get things right or trying to make sure they know more, know enough. And a lot of the time, like what people feel drawn to is people that are really love what they do. They're so excited. They're like obsessed. And they're like, oh, I feel like that creates magnetism. They may not even be like that interested in that for themselves, but they'll feel drawn to it because you're so excited. Like I was walking with a friend of mine recently, and I've got this new play stuff that's coming through me, and I was talking to her about it, and she's like, "Oh my god, I'm so excited! Like you're inspiring in me. Like I'm just so excited for you." And she's like, "I want more of this for me." Like and I was like, "Oh, it's really nice to receive that that response, that feedback." And then she started talking to me about an idea that she had, and I was like, "I'm not really feeling you in that." And I was like, where's that coming from? And she's like, oh, because this just makes sense. This feels like the right thing to do. It makes more sense. That's what people want from me. That's what people are asking me for. And I was like, what is it that you really want? What really excites you? And she's like, oh, well, this and this and this. And I'm like, so why aren't you doing that? And then that's when people's fears come up. Oh, no one wants it. Like, what if it doesn't work out? Like, and usually what's at the core of that is that it's not safe to, I'm not allowed to, that's not approved of, that's not acceptable, that's not valuable. All our childhood stuff
Yeah.
is usually there. I got shut down when I did that before. And I've had that experience. I did comedy. I created a comedy show online in COVID, and I did one show because someone got on and basically like shut down, and I was like, no, not doing that. And I look back and I'm like, oh, that's so sad that I listened to one, was a couple of people. It was their perception too. And yet I had like 50 other people that were saying how amazing and how funny it was. And it's just like, we can't let that stop us, if it really lights us up. And I'm actually in the process of putting another comedy show together. And I'm like, nah, nothing's stopping me now. Let's go.
Uh, I love that. Mm, yeah, that just it feels so good to have that permission because I feel like we all have that conditioning and those parts of us that were shut down, and that does bring up the fears of like it's not safe for me to be me. It's not safe for me to express. It's not safe for me to play. And this is like a lot of my work is like creating that safety just to be you, to express you. And like something that I'm always reminding people of is like all of you is welcome here, all the parts, bring them all in, like let's bring them all home and really come home to that wholeness of all of you is welcome here. um and it's really fascinating. I had a journey recently with one of my mentors, and she guided me through this process, and what I saw was like, even like for me, there was still a big part of me that was holding back fully being seen. And so there was like this pendulation of like wanting to go full force and like, here I am, and this is what I'm excited to talk about. And then like retracting, and then coming out, and then retracting. And I was in a space of retraction, of like hiding away. And I saw like this lighthouse and like this light beaming out of my third eye. But the light had been focused on what we might perceive as like the online trolls and the people that are going to tear me down, or the people that aren't going to accept me, or even like my own self talk and the parts of me that didn't accept me coming through, and just kind of seeing like all of these shadowy figures that I was just so fixated on and wasn't allowing me to really shine the light on who I'm here to serve, and to really focus on like these are the people that are here to receive what I'm saying. Those ones that I'm currently like focused on are not here for my message. And I could just see this shift of like shifting that light and now focusing on like these are my people that I'm here to serve, that are ready and longing for my message. And yes, those other that chatter can still be there a little bit, and that's okay, but I don't have to actually listen to that. I can acknowledge it. I can take reflection. I can go like within and like, is this true for me? And I can acknowledge what's coming up. It's not about bypassing any of that, but I don't need to focus. I don't need to allow that to dictate and control my life and my exploration and my excitement and my joy. I'm going to pivot that light, and this happened on such a deep somatic level and opened me up of like, oh, I can actually feel my mission here. I can feel my heart here. Whereas when I was focusing on the fears around the people, like what are they going to say? Potentially these trolls that are going to come out and attack me or challenge me, my heart would close and I would forget my mission. It would become really foggy. As soon as I shifted that light, my heart just opened and I felt myself just almost like sink into my power. Like it felt more grounded. Like it wasn't this forceful power of like, get out there and try and force things in that way. It was like, I'm in my seat. I'm present. I'm embodied. I'm conscious. I'm aware. I'm in my power. But from this space, my heart is opening, and I'm now open to following my joy and my play and my pleasure. And like, let's see what's out there. Let's see how this feels. Let's see what we can play with here. Mm.
Yeah, it's a powerful experience to go through, and I think that what that really speaks to is like how much we can hold ourselves back because we're afraid of people's judgment, especially being recovering good girls. It is one of the biggest things. It's like if I show up in this way, someone's gonna think I'm not good. Someone's gonna judge me, and there that will probably happen, and that's the reality. Someone is probably going to judge you, and we can't let that stop us. Yeah, and um, so this is where doing this work is powerful as well, as to getting support and mentorship and things like that, where people can support you. When these pieces come up, to notice, um, when there's, oh, I'm holding myself back, and yeah, if I could go back and do things differently, not that I like to have any regrets, um, it would be really like looking at what is it that I really, really, really want, and how do I really, truly want to express myself, and to keep just showing up anyway. Because in my experience, it's never actually as like whatever I'm afraid of either never actually doesn't happen, or it's never as bad as I think it's going to be. And the pain of regret, which I now, actually, there is regret there. I'm just going to own it. The pain of regret is greater than the pain of failure.
Yeah.
So, and which has been a lot for me, is the fear of failing and the fear of being judged, but the pain of regret is greater. So it's been really interesting just reflecting back on, where I've held myself back and not, I've had an inspiring idea. I have this idea, I'm going to do this thing. And then months go by and I've not taken any action because there's some fear there around that. And some of the ideas have been like pretty out there. And usually the ideas that are probably the ones that are most for us are usually the ones that are the most out there. Yeah, I have a past client who teaches light language. She's making millions of dollars, and like light language, some people will be like, that is so woo woo and so out there and crazy. But she's become really successful because she didn't let her fear stop her. She's like, this is my idea and I'm going for it. And she's gone ahead and done it. And not that it's just about the money, but because she has a big mission on her heart, but she's like one of those people that does not allow the fear to stop her
Yeah.
from doing it. And she is super like, the way that she expresses herself is like super out there, super woo woo, super like in your face. And people judge her. Absolutely. She receives a lot of judgment around some of the ways that she shows up, but her mission and her is greater than the fear. And that's where we have to make our desire greater than our fear. Not easy to do because our brains are wired to keep us safe.
Totally. And
Yeah.
that's where the somatic and the embodiment work and the mentorship and the support does come in, because I feel like we've all got that and it doesn't go away. It's just we meet new layers of it, and like the more we put ourselves out there, it's like we meet new challenges. Like for me, I love having that support and that mentorship and that space held for me. And that ability just to be held and just fully surrender. So I don't have, like, I've got all these practices, but it's really nice to actually be held in those processes. Um, mm. But yeah, it brings back as well, like we want real. We want real, and it's really just allowing yourself to be in your realness rather than trying to create something that we think someone wants, or be someone that we think someone wants, or that we think someone will love, accept, and where we'll belong, because that's what like our core needs are, to be loved, accepted, and belong. And it's like, really, when we're trying to contort ourselves in order to be loved and accepted, we never really fully feel loved and accepted anyway. We might kind of, in a sense, fit in, but it feels like we're holding ourselves back from fitting into the place that we actually deeply desire to fit in. So when we're our full authentic self, it's, for me, it's like the soul tribe becomes magnetic. Like those people that light you up, that you deeply desire to connect with, that you deeply desire that intimacy with, they show up when you're your full authentic self. Um, and that's what I've felt for me. The more that I can be my full self, the more that those people show up, the more that I feel more of that love and acceptance that I crave. And the more that I'm able to step more fully into what I desire to share with the world, it's being in that full authenticity, rather than that trying to contort to be who I think I need to be. But coming back to that realness, and it just reminds me of the story that you did share when you stood in the circle, and it's like, this is me, just raw, authentic, naked, like this is me. And the realness that people can actually connect to, rather than trying to be this perfect version of self that no one can really connect to.
Yes. Yeah, and that's exactly it. People are going to feel more drawn, and your people that are for you are going to be drawn to you, not specifically like what you're teaching.
Yeah.
And so, just to give a quick example, is that I recently realized I was teaching a lot of on my socials. I was doing like teaching about somatics, and somatics isn't just a modality, right? And I started to share like educational content of like how to XYZ using somatics, how to work through your feel of failure using somatics. And something was feeling off. I'm like, something's not feeling right. It's feeling right here. And I sat with it. I'm like, oh, this is not what I want to be sharing. This is just a modality. What do I want to share? I want to share more about play. I want to share more about all these things that I'm exploring through play and how I'm playing important players and all this kind of stuff. So I wrote a post about that. Now the engagement that I got on that post compared to the other posts I was doing was beyond, like way beyond. And I was like, oh, that's right. I just it was like a nice reminder of like, oh, this is actually what people want from
Yeah.
me.
So you can
And then I've
feel
had,
it.
yeah, they
Yeah.
can feel it, like the energy behind it. Like it's not just about what you share, it's about the energy behind what you're sharing. And people felt it. And I've had people say, oh, when you wrote this post about this, like, oh, like I had to send it to this person and la la la. And I get more comments like that about my play stuff. Even like I did a post the other day about this comedy show I'm creating. So many comments. Everyone's like, yes, yes, yes. I'm like, yeah, people really want this. So it just gives me confirmation. But if I don't say it and I don't put it out there, I'm not going to get that as well. And it should be also like I'm not waiting for people's confirmation. It's just like a nice surprise. It's like,
Mm.
ah, yeah, this is like a nice surprise to hear that people want those things. But there's aliveness behind it. It's my aliveness,
Yeah.
and so sometimes we just have to dip our toe and like start putting ourselves out there. And um, yeah, and what I really encourage people to do is to explore where in your life are you doing something from a this is what I think people want rather than from a place of like this feels really exciting and alive for me to share, like I really love this, like,
Mm.
and usually it's an edge. That
Yeah.
thing is usually an edge. It's not usually the comfortable thing. It's usually the thing that there's some fear around.
Yeah.
That's where you want to go. That's
Yeah.
where your aliveness is. That's where your fulfillment is.
Mm, I resonate with that. And for me, I feel like when I'm doing the thing of, well, I think this is what people want or it's what I should do, there's like a, ugh, I can't be bothered. Like, there's like a, I don't really want to do that in my body. Like, I can feel that heaviness. Whereas when it's like meeting that edge, there's that excitement. This is what I desire to share. This is like, my body opens up, my heart opens up, and it lights me up. And it's the same thing. I get that feedback pretty quickly when I've like shared something that's true to my soul and what I'm really like deeply passionate about. It's felt. It's so much more engagement.
Mm,
Mm,
yeah, love it.
yeah. Thank you so much. What an incredible conversation. We'll start to wrap up now. I'm just curious if there's anything else you desire to share. What's just kind of popped into my mind is there was another piece around what you were sharing, like the connection between play and sexuality and wholeness. I'm curious if you want to speak to that for like a couple moments and if there's anything else that you wanted to share around play and how people can bring more of that into their life.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like play is really an opportunity us to explore the parts of ourselves that have been shut down, and so is sexuality. And so it's like wherever there's the most shutdown is where we're going to find our wholeness. And it's kind of goes back to what I shared earlier is that those are often the two places where a lot of us in personal development have been the most shut down. And so, and also like sexual exploring our sexuality is like an adult playground, really, I see. Um, and when we let go of the need to get it right and just be in the curiosity of it, then that's where we're going to meet all these parts of ourselves and we're going to get to bring them into wholeness. So I bring a lot of the play into the sexuality work because I do feel like it is a space where um, we can be playful. And in my experience of doing a lot of sexuality work, some people take it very seriously. There are a lot of trainings and events I've been to in sexuality that have been very serious, and I'm not about that. There's time and a place for like the sacredness, and also the sacredness doesn't have to be serious. And there's a time where to bring more of the creative playfulness out. And I truly feel like that's what so many of us are actually longing for, particularly in personal development. It can get very serious, and yeah, there's just a longing for more of that laughter and silliness and playfulness that I really encourage people to give themselves permission to explore.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what's what's happening in your world? I know you've shared a few things that are coming up for
Yeah.
you. So kind of where can people find you, and is there any like offerings that you're kind of got on at the moment? Anything that you want to share for people to come and find you?
Sure. So my Instagram is at EJ Love Official, and or you find me on Facebook under Emmajane Love. I Most people have known me as EJ, but I'm actually transitioning back to my birth name, which is Emmajane. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey realizing that I created EJ as a bit of a persona, a professional persona, and um, getting back to more of what feels more feminine is Emmajane. And so I have a playbook that people can download for free. It's ejlove.com/intimacy playbook. So that's got heaps of questions and games and practices that's going to help people become more playful. And it is based around intimacy and relating and working with a partner, but there's some self practices in there as well. So I do have some trainings that will be coming up. I do have another conscious sexuality retreat coming up. But it's best to look on Instagram because you'll find all the updated things. And I've also got a teacher training coming up early next year. Well, it depends when you're listening to this podcast episode. So I would just recommend to go have a look at my website. And I am working on creating a physical game as well so that people can buy that and they can have it in their own home, which is going to be really about giving people permission to play and create more intimacy and self-expression. So that's really exciting. So I'm like looking forward to like getting to create that. And who knows, like I might have my comedy show out whenever you're listening to this. And I'm doing more performances and things in different spaces. So, if anyone's listening and they, are curious about that or, hiring me to come and do some like performance art stuff, like it's usually like embodied. I usually tell like embodied stories through that are like really transformational as well as a bit of comedy, depending on what the spaces need. I'm doing something for a corporate event in October, which is going to be really interesting to be bringing my performance to a corporate space as well as like teaching them about play. So that's really cool. So yeah, I do lots of things, but I just recommend to go to my social media and you'll be able to see all the things I'm up to. And then I have my podcast, which is Conscious Sex. So yeah, you can find that on the podcast apps.
Amazing. I love it. So much play.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure those links are below for everyone. Thank you so much, Emmajane, for coming on to the podcast and sharing your story. And yeah, what a incredible conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.